What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. All right, so recently, I think it might have been on the Mind the Game podcast. I think a new episode airs every Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken. But recently, LeBron James, I think he was with Kevin Garnett. It might have been Kevin Garnett. But anyway, I think it was Kevin Garnett, and I think it was Steve Nash as usual, and LeBron, and I think they were talking about maybe different scorers over the past in NBA history, maybe over the past 40 years or whatever. But anyway, LeBron James said that in his opinion, Kevin Durant is the most equipped scorer in NBA history, right? And they were talking about this on Speak. Of course, Speak features former NFL player turned analyst Keyshawn Johnson, Paul Pierce, who's a former teammate of Kevin Garnett, and Joy Taylor. And Paul Pierce said that in his opinion, he should be part of this conversation as far as the most equipped scorer in NBA history. Okay? This is what he said.
I was probably the best pure scorer ever in the history of.
I do think that Paul Pierce is underappreciated by today's basketball fans. I've always was pissed off at how a lot of Celtics fans didn't really give Paul Pierce his just due. I remember a lot of Celtics fans, all they really did was unfairly compare Paul Pierce to Larry Bird. And don't get me wrong, Larry Bird is the greater Celtic, but let's not act like Larry Bird didn't benefit from playing with Kevin McHale, Robert Parrish, Dennis Johnson, Nate Tiny Archibald, said Cornbread Maxwell. Let's not act like he didn't benefit from playing with these guys. Act like he didn't benefit from playing with Reggie Lewis. Whereas Paul Pierce, for much of his Celtic career, up until I don't think until around 30, he didn't really play with great players consistently. I think the best player he played with before he was 30 was Anton Walker. So that's telling you something right there. You know what I'm saying? But Paul Pierce was that dude. You know what I'm saying? He was called a truth for a reason. He did have the mid range. He could shoot the three ball. He was a good free throw shooter. He was a decent finisher. He wasn't the most athletic or quickest guy. When he was younger, he could take it to the rack. He could score over in traffic. Okay. I know some younger people are going to say something about his field goal percentage, but you got to remember, if you notice, all those guys in that era were shooting around 45%, whether it was Paul Pierce or whether it was Kobe or whether it was Tracy McGrady, Allen Iverson, hell, even if you talk about Latrell Sprewell. It's a reason why their field goal percentages were all in that sort of that 43 to 40, I'll say 43 to 45% range. And that's because we didn't have all those three-point shooters that we have today back then. We had some specialists, but they weren't guys that could, usually facilitate well or create their own shot and draw defenses. Those are guys that really benefited from other players being the primary offensive threat, and they, by default, were able to get open shots off of the other players' playmaking. You know what I'm saying? Like a Tim Legler, like a Steve Kerr. We didn't have these guys. They were down there. Everybody on the floor could shoot from outside. Also, we had real bigs back then. And the bigs by the mid to late 90s were becoming extremely athletic. They weren't like the traditional, burly enforcer types that primarily stayed around the rim. These guys were able to have the athleticism because the game was starting to become more about athleticism That's how you was able to be a scorer. You had to be able to get through the little small gaps. But these guys, as far as perimeter players are concerned, but that's what started having guys like Tony McDyess and Kevin Garnett and, Jermaine O'Neal and, like I said, Young Shaq and David Robinson. You start having an increase in athleticism with these guys. And that made it much, much more difficult, as well as the rules being more in favor for defensive players. That's why the field goal percentages were much lower back then. I got to push back on this Kevin Durant thing, man. Yes, he is a great scorer, and yes, he was incredibly efficient. But I've seen Kevin Durant shit the bed too much in big games. I remember that series against the Celtics in 2022, and what was it, the second round? Might have been when I think it was the first. I think it was the second round when I think he only had one good game out of 5 against Boston, and they shut him down. He was a turnover machine, and it makes me think to myself, wow, how would he have fared in the 90s against small, pestering guards like, or relatively small compared to him, Jason Kidd, or even a Muggsy Bogues? How would he have fared against players who were good at stripping the ball, like Alvin Robertson or or Derek Harper or Ron Harper? How would he have fared against a Michael Jordan or Scottie Pippen? You know what I'm saying? Because he was a turnover machine. Same thing with the Golden State Warriors in 2016. The last 3 games, he played like shit, along with Russell Westbrook. They both played like shit. So, I've seen Paul Pierce have big games and huge quarters and come through in the clutch and hit game winners. This guy won a 3-point contest. You know what I'm saying? This guy, you know what I'm saying? He was a versatile player and was more skilled than people give him credit for. But most equipped scorer, I mean, I'm sorry, but if this was a conversation from 10, 15 years ago, the 2 names that popped up most often were Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. And then just to throw it in there as far as guys who were the most lethal scorers. Now, they weren't 3-point shooters because there was no real emphasis on 3-point line back then. But you got to throw in Alex English. You got to throw in Adrian Dantley. You got to throw in Bernard King. I mean, I don't know what we're doing today. George Gervin. What are we doing today? Rick Barry. I mean, it's like we're making shit up today. Like, and this is dangerous because this is agenda-driven BS. And then another reason why Kevin Durant is so efficient is that, over the past several years, he's reluctant to go outside of his comfort zone offensively. He picks his spots. That's cool. But sometimes the game necessitates him to take charge and take over the game, and he don't want to do it. You know what I'm saying? Like Paul Pierce said, sometimes because he was the only real viable scorer that Boston had many times, he had to sometimes take bad shots. I mean, honestly, has Kevin Durant ever been in that situation? Has he ever really been in a situation for long, at least for a considerable portion of his career, where he was the only guy on his team and they had to rely on him? I mean, when he was with the Thunder, he had Russell Westbrook, right? And James Harden for a period of time. Then when he went to the Warriors, it was Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. Then he went to Brooklyn. It was him, Kyrie Irving, and James Harden whenever they were available. Then with the Phoenix, it was him, Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, and now that he's going to Houston, I mean, it's a little bit more of his of a role for him, I guess. But you still got Fred VanVleet and some other guys. Kobe had years where he was the only guy. Mike had years where he was the only guy, and he was efficient. Gervin. Now, Gervin had some help too, but you get where I'm going with this. Rick Barry had years where he was the only. Rick Barry won a championship in '75. Now, he shot okay. I think he shot like 45, 46% from the floor, right? But there were some games where he shot terrible. But then again, aside from a rookie Jamal Wilkes, I think a rookie Jamal Wilkes, he was the only real guy that could score in that 10. I think there was one other guy. And I think they were both like young. So, look at it from different angles, man. Obviously, LeBron James picking Kevin Durant, I kind of look at it as a passive aggressive shot at Mike and Kobe, as usual. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, that's just how I look at it, at least. Tell me what you guys think.